Welcome to the 10th episode of Under the Hood. 10th episode is almost like an anniversary.
It is.
Today we are going to talk about something quite exciting. We're talking about security, hacking, that kind of thing. And with me today I have Jonathan. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Vincent.
So tell us a bit about yourself and tell us about what you do in relation to security.
Okay, well, my name is, of course, Jonathan Davis. I'm a security program manager on the BIC security team. So BIC is the business and industry co-pilots. It's the business unit that includes Business Central, but it also includes all of the Dynamics products and the Power Platform.
So your role is broader than just Business Central?
It's broader than just Business Central, although my origins are in Business Central. So I started off there, and because Business Central is such a good security culture, I sort of evolved from there into these kind of bigger roles. So yeah, we're responsible for the security of all of the Power Platform and Dynamics 365, which is quite a responsibility. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So before we get into more specific into Business Central, let's talk a little bit about security in general. You hear a lot of in the news. People hear a lot about security, hackers. So is that how bad is it? Are hackers really at the gate? Should we be concerned?
Yeah, I think we should be concerned. I think the hackers kind of are at the gates a little bit. Although I think that things are getting better. I think that awareness out there about the importance of cybersecurity, the reporting on it, the general response from the industry has been better. I mean, certainly here, as you probably know, here within Microsoft, security has just been massively reprioritized in the last year or so due to some fairly severe incidents that we were subjected to. So I think that it's a kind of a mixture. Now, there's a lot of people that are incentivized to sort of say that, well, the sky's falling in and everything is falling apart and it's getting worse and worse.
But the threat is still present.
The threat is very present, and I think I don't think that people quite appreciate how ruinous it can be for both individuals and organizations if they do experience a severe incident. I mean, we've got a very special responsibility because we hold the keys of the kingdoms for so many businesses, so many organizations are dependent on us, Microsoft, and also in Business Central. But I think that what we're seeing more broadly is a growing awareness amongst normies, amongst ordinary people. You're probably getting calls from your elderly parents and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of alarmism out there. Just recently there was this thing about 16 billion passwords have been exposed, and there had elderly parents calling up, have I been hacked? That's an example where there is an industry of people that are designed to sort of inflate and exaggerate the cybersecurity story in unhelpful ways. Those 16 billion passwords were in fact collections of all the previous dumps and a smattering of other ones.
So it was not like a new...
It wasn't new stuff. It was just, people just keep making lists or recombining them. Yeah. But it was reported by sort of certain news that, got widespread, was in the BBC and all the rest of it.
But just to be clear, there's still a real thing. There are such a thing as lists of password and databases of passwords circulating around.
Exactly.
And if you use products like LastPass or other thing, they will tell you this password is being compromised, and that's the thing. It's not just a...
I think there's a good side and a bad side. So I think the bad side is just like, people are terrified. But the good side is that it makes people use password managers. It makes people use passkeys, makes people use multi-factor authentication. And they also realize, when people do ask you, well, why should I care if that password ends up in a breach? The main reason that sort of why we talk about not having password reuse, for example, is that you put in the same password that you use for your bank in with the cinema. The cinema gets hacked. And now they've got the password for your bank. And this is exactly how so many hacks happen. Yeah. It's credential reuse or password spraying. I mean, right now, we in Microsoft experience sometimes billions, if not trillions of attempts of people that are taking these rainbow tables and other lists of passwords, username and password pairs that they've stolen from people. For example, there's a type of malware called an info stealer. That when it executes on a computer, it grabs all the cookies and all the passwords out of mostly the browsers. It's not so good at getting, and it gives them to attackers. Then attackers can just reuse these or sell them on, and they can try them, against sort of more difficult targets like businesses. So I think, just to summarize, I think that it is important that people realize that these cybersecurity practices people keep going on about, they're kind of minimum bar now to stay safe in this digital world.
And there's also this, I don't have the statistics, but I know that that there's a lot of companies and businesses who got attacked, and typical thing is ransomware attacks or,
Exactly.
or denial of service attacks, and they're not too proud of the fact that their security is maybe not quite up to date. So a lot of these incidents, they get unnoticed and unreported. They just pay the attackers, or and they don't tell about it, because imagine you have your own business and you get attacked. How much do you want to advertise about it? You probably want to keep quiet about it. You don't want your customers to know about it. These kind of things. So a lot of these things also get a little bit unnoticed.
I think that many of people that have worked in incident response, they'll tell you that the first thing that happens is, okay, fine, we've evicted the attackers, and then it's like, cover it up. Don't tell anybody. I think that there is a big drive now. Some of it's led by legislation, and some of it's led by just industry best practices for people to fess up, because it shouldn't be about victim blaming. I mean, a determined attacker will be able to get. I mean, we talk. There's a phrase which they use for ATPs, advanced APTs, advanced persistent threats. What we sometimes use, we prefer, is sort of high focus, high skill, high resource. In other words, if someone kind of wants to hack you, if they've got enough resources and enough skill, they'll probably find a way. The game is to just make it harder and harder and harder for people. Make yourself a hard target. It's to slow people down and force them out. And I think with the ransomware epidemic, it started hitting individuals firstly. It was just ordinary people that were getting a kind of a virus, but the virus had encrypted their stuff. And then the attackers suddenly realized that this was small money compared to what they could get out of institutions. So they started going after, companies. And they often now target some of the softest and most vulnerable. They go for schools, they go for municipalities, they go for hospitals. These are people with no honor.
Is it fair to say that Business Central is a small and medium business product? So a lot of our customers and partners are, in the small and medium business industry. They are maybe more obvious targets, because they are in that segment where big companies like Microsoft, other large corporations. They have they do all the right things about security, and they have a lot of money, but they're a lot harder to hack. Whereas they probably one could imagine there's a lot of small businesses who have invested in security, maybe not as much as they should. I just an anecdotal story. I was talking to somebody. I won't reveal any name, but they were saying, they had an on-prem business, and we can get back to that. On-prem versus the cloud with Business Central. But they were saying, I have why should I be concerned about security? I have a firewall. So what's your reaction to that? Because I think a lot of, it's a genuine comment, and I think I understand why people would think, okay, I have my server in my basement, I have a firewall, I'm safe. So what's your comment on that?
Look, I feel genuinely sorry for ordinary people out there, because the entire software industry has papered over the cracks for 30 years. I mean, software is cheap because we're indemnified against the consequences of our mistakes. This is the original sin of the software industry, which is that if you crash a car because your brakes fail, then your car company is going to have to recall all of those products, and they're going to have to pay compensation to the people injured. That's not the case for the software industry. As a consequence, software is a lot cheaper than it would be if it were otherwise. But there has not really been a strong incentive to prioritize security. So we have walked all of ourselves into this situation, and ordinary people shouldn't have to be experts in security. They have an expectation that the software and the things which we provide them are secure. And they're often misinformed by, again, the snake oily type people that say, all you need is a firewall. And I do think that is pretty regrettable, really, because I feel sorry for people. I really do think that it's not fair. I mean, and you talked about the small to medium-sized businesses. You're entirely right about that. They are often the absolutely most vulnerable people. Wael, who's the security champ for Business Central, along with Ed, we did a talk at Directions a couple of years ago, a long one, kind of a multi-session, 245 minutes, talking about partner security and to some degree personal security, because there's an overlap, or security for SMBs. Because we realized that those businesses are probably the most vulnerable. They're in the perfect sweet spot for ransomware attackers. Some of them are kind of getting big. You've got 200 employees, let's say. You might be dealing with tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue, but you've got like a person over there who's half of their job is to be a cybersecurity person. You don't have a dedicated SOC. You don't have a dedicated cybersecurity team. Ransomware people know about this. They're scanning. They're looking. They've got, people don't realize that these are big businesses. You're not up against the guy in his basement. Ransomware crews like Revil or whatever, these are large organizations.
They're organized groups. They are not.
They go to offices.
So this romantic picture or whatever it is that people have that's largely conveyed by Hollywood movies of this guy with the
breach the firewall.
Yeah, exactly. Guys in a basement. That's kind
matrix
of
text, and then suddenly that fills in the password one by one. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
So it's not like that.
Exactly, and I do think that so there is a push now. One of the things which we're very forceful on with SFI, the Secure Future Initiative, is secure by default. We've often, since the 70s, we've had all these security principles like least privilege and secure by default, but they haven't really had traction. And that loops back to what you were saying. I remember, you may not remember this, but with Windows XP, when it originally shipped, it didn't have a firewall. So any ports, any services that were running on this, they were exposed to the internet. And the first versions of the kind of built-in firewall with Service Pack 2, they were, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember that the first thing was it was kind of block bad. So it was open everywhere, and then, someone is trying to, attack me from this IP address, and I'll block it. And then the fundamental mental model switch was, no, block everything and allow list. That was transformational. That suddenly boosted sort of network security anyway for those Windows computers massively. This was after these various worms and other things had forced our hand. And I think that the what is incumbent on the software industry, and it's very close to the heart in BIC and in Business Central, I know this, is that it's secure by default. When you switch it on, it's secure. And you have to read the documents and to really strive to screw it up by messing with the configurations to make it insecure. That's the objective now. Because I do think that the days of basically saying, well, you have to read a book and you have to get a university level education on cybersecurity in order to operate your business with our software, it's not acceptable anymore.
Yeah, I mean, is that fair to say that security is so complex, so difficult these days? Then you should let it. You should, as your point is, like you should let professional take care of it. Like the Microsoft Cloud, for example, Azure is secure by default. We have really professional people, experts in that area who do a lot of work and are really know what they are doing, and they take a lot of the the heat and the concern you should have around your service, rather than if you try to host it yourself. That's just
You're absolutely right. I think
you're going to get hacked if you
look. There are circumstances where you want to have air gapping and hostings yourselves in certain governments and so on. But I think there's no doubt, and people are going to think that we're kind of marketing shills. But the fact is that you get a kind of the network effect benefits. And it works a little bit like this. If you imagine that you are part of, you're a Business Central customer, and we experience some kind of an attempted attack against you. Maybe it is a credential stuffing, people trying multiple attempts to log in using username and password pair, or whatever else. Or somebody else as part of this huge network of people that we work with. And we work with Google and Amazon and Apple and all manner of industries, sharing intelligence, sharing threat intelligence. So let's say we get some notification that a specific IP address is malicious. We can cascade that to all of our customers immediately. So a single customer is attacked or even compromised, and then we can plug that into our systems to defend everybody else. So what we have is a kind of a collective strength, or that comes inherently with that. The other thing is, you're entirely right. With highly complex systems, it's very easy to make a mistake. You get one, and all you need to do is get one thing wrong, basically, and all of a sudden you're exposed. I mean, countless people have. I mean, I don't know if you remember back in the day when some people used to leave their, they would expose their C drives to the internet, and there was some good Samaritans who would go and put a text file on there saying, please can you block, not share your C drive. I think today what's happening is that many people realize that, especially for these technologies which a lot of people are using. So let's say, containerization or advanced networking and all the rest of it. You can roll your own. You can do that if you have a home lab. You can if you've got a very compelling business case. But there's no doubt that if you leave it to professionals who are, as you say, secure by default, watched by network operations centers staffed by the best in the world, using threat intelligence that is the absolute freshest. You get an immediate security yield from that. So I think that there's no doubt in my mind that customers would be well advised to sort of take shelter in the cloud.
That's a good picture. I like
sort of it's a port in a storm. And I do think that, some people would counter and say, well, cloud is very complex and people mess things up. And it's got its own complexities. There's no doubt about that. For people that are potentially building their own solutions or building on our past stuff. But for the SaaS products, that's not the case.
But even in sheer, as a resource, from a resource standpoint, I mean, Microsoft has, a large amount of resources in terms of people, and not only machines and, that are constantly, monitoring and all these, the tooling and all that we have, but there are also a lot of people working on security.
Sure.
Whereas, if you have a small business, how many, you can't, can you afford to hire a security expert?
Yeah.
And you need to be of a certain size from a business standpoint before it makes sense to have a security expert in your team.
You're entirely right.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how much goes into proper security, proper 21st century security. There is an enormous amount of work that goes into, because of the nature of this business, because of the importance of trust and security, because how critical it is to us and our own reputation to make sure that we also have this duty of care to all of our customers. So we are undoubtedly elite. But we have had large customers come into us for EBCs and all the rest of us, and we've asked them about their security practices and found out absolute horror stories. For example, all code that ships from us, from Business Central, is reviewed. All systems have a threat modeling exercise. So that is reviewed by a security expert. A threat model is created. That threat model is assessed. The risks are tabulated. The mitigations for those risks are listed out as action items. They're tracked in a system. And then and only then is the thing cleared for release or all that. And we've maintained that even in the age of AI, with this enormous pressure to push out AI features and respond to the AI moment. The SLT made a judgment at the early days of, in 2022, hey, all of these AI features need to go through the professional security teams like my own. It was very hard work for us. We were doing 6-7 reviews a day, but that is the kind of thing which we just don't see. This is the security development lifecycle. It's been around for 20 years. It stems from 2003, from the trustworthy computing era, but it's just not practiced out there. Other basic things like code scanning, static analysis. Vast amounts of customers and small businesses, they just don't do this. They just have
the whole code from Business Central code goes through the scanning and
through the COPS and the various other things. Yeah,
a lot of static analysis, finding out is there any code that's potentially could.
We had a customer.
Issues.
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention names. We had a large customer that came in, a Danish customer, we were asking about their. Here we have this concept of the secure admin workstation, or SAW as we call it, and these are specialist devices that we use to access production systems. They're completely separate from our corporate systems.
They're very controlled. Like you cannot install anything on these other than the things that are mandated or curated.
Exactly.
So that in order to avoid that, you get a machine into a production environment that potentially can contain
malware or something else. They're extremely locked down. They go through a specialist VPN. You need a second factor physical sort of dongle YubiKey to be able to even log in and use these things. And we were asking this customer, do you have something like this? And they were like, oh no, we've got 4,000 engineers. All of them can access the production databases. So I said, you're one engineer, one click from potentially having a compromised endpoint that's going to be able to read your production database. So these concepts of segmentation, of least privilege, of zero trust, the things which are bread and butter, building up the SDL and all the way through to operational security, the monitoring, the constant vigilance and assessment, the AI-powered kind of signal boosting that we have. These are things that they have evolved because we've been attacked a lot. They're the benefits of scale because we've got this huge estate. With Entra, we can see these attack profiles everywhere. So these businesses and people that are kind of rolling their own, they reasonably can't be expected to achieve the same levels of vigilance and capability as people like ourselves. And we don't. And in a way, that's what we're saying is, hey, don't bother. we'll take care of that. The promise to you is that we'll take care of that for you. Of course, there's always we have the joint responsibility model. There are things which the customer will always be responsible for. And our job is for those pieces of it, to make sure that they can do their jobs. So for example, we ship an awful lot of auditing and security logs to Purview so that customers can also make their own alerts, because maybe they can spot anomalies better than we can. Or they can see things which we can't because of privacy, for example, like exactly who it was that did a certain action. Mm-hmm. So it's not just that we take care of the sort of the platform, the substrate, and the SaaS layer. We also have a duty to make sure that we educate our customers, which we do. I mean, in Business Central, there are almost always security talks at all of the main conferences.
Yeah. We also have this bounty program.
Yes.
Which, can you talk a little bit about it? Or?
Yeah, the bounty program, the Dynamics 365 bounty program, that is one of the big successes that we've had in the last few years. I remember having large debates with several of the executives at the time about the wisdom of it.
But what is it? I mean,
okay, sorry. So the bounty program is that we essentially pay people to report security bugs to us, vulnerabilities.
So if you find a bug, you'll get a reward.
You get a fat load of money.
Financial reward.
Exactly. You'll get a credit. You'll be, if the CVE is assigned, you'll get your name next to it, and of course you'll get money. And we have people
if you go and want to earn some money, you look for a vulnerability, and we'll reward you if you contact us.
And we think it's fair. It's responsible disclosure. So instead of the bad guys and girls getting these bugs as part of an exploit chain, as part of there is an industry that creates 0 days and exploits and sells them to attackers. There is a sort of a shadow world, a bit like Stranger Things, an underworld that's there. So
what's a 0 day? You hear that all the time. Yeah. I just watched that Netflix series, very good one with Robert De Niro, by the way.
Right. Yes.
0 days. So what is a 0 day? You hear that expression all the time.
I mean, a 0 day just means a vulnerability that is that the sort of attackers know about before the vendors do, or we know about it.
Right. So as opposed to there's just a number of vulnerabilities that are known.
Yes,
that can
and they've been patched potentially.
They've been patched,
so they're out there, and then there's
they're out there. Maybe they are a problem if people haven't installed the patches or get onto the latest version. But they are known vulnerability. But then there's the ones
we don't know about.
We don't know about, and this is a 0 day because we don't. They are potentially more dangerous because we don't have a patch for it.
Yeah.
So they can be exploited. Well,
0 days are a little bit fetishized. They Netflix, things like that, various others, they will make the point that, there's a 0 day. And some people
sounds
say,
cool. So
it sounds cool, yeah. There's no doubt that 0 days are very dangerous. They are used by sophisticated attackers in very, very effective ways. Take, for example, some of the state-backed actors that like to steal cryptocurrency. They have very sophisticated teams that would chain together multiple 0 days. They had a 0 day in Chrome, Sandbox Escape, and then they chained that up with something else, and they used it to strong effect. But most hacking, most successful breaches have nothing to do with 0 days. They really, and even most bugs don't turn into vulnerabilities that are used. Only, I think, 5% of security bugs end up being weaponized, or we actually see being used out there.
Yeah, so talking about which, I think, again, I don't have the statistics, but a lot of the hacking actually is social engineering, right?
A lot of it social engineering, a lot of
it's a lot easier to call somebody and pretend you're somebody else, or
that's right,
and get their password, or get them to do something, or even you were talking about before, an organization with 4,000 engineers or employees.
You bribe one of them.
And one of them get disgruntled or fired or whatever, or get angry with the company, and then go and sell. And not even the person itself would do something, but they would go and sell some, something to.
They do. I mean, look, there was a cryptocurrency. Actually, Coinbase was compromised recently. They had some contractors in a third country. They had very strict controls on the computers. These folks were just taking pictures of the screens with their cell phones. They had been compromised by criminals that were paying them. They're watching hundreds of millions of dollars worth of transactions every day, and they're paid peanuts. So, of course, that's a massive boost to the insider threat problem. Yes, I think that just back to the whole kind of 0 day thing, it's really workaday stuff that gets people compromised. Most of it's identity compromise now, reuse creds, lack of multi-factor authentication, sometimes password spraying, a lot of social engineering. I call up the help desk and I can convince somebody to oh, my MFA, I'm Vincent, I'm a really important guy, and I've got a meeting now in a minute, and I can't get into my, can you reset it for me? And, oh, no, you know who I am. And of course, these poor people panic and they do it. So that's a very common social engineering thing is SIM swapping. It's a bit more robust in Europe, but in America, it's trivially easy. All you need to do is buy off a manager in one of these phone company boutiques. Okay. Like in a shop, and they can then reset the SIM card so that people that are using that to get SMS as a multi-factor authenticator, that's a disaster. That's why we advise people do not use SMS as a multi-factor thing, because it's compromised. Also, the telcos are often highly vulnerable, and those protocols are not safe. But just on the bounty program, because I do think that this is a very interesting area. We of course want to incentivize people to come and disclose to us responsibly, and we pay a lot. On my team, we have a red teamer who is gifted, and he was the most successful bounty Dynamics 365 and Power Platform bounty person. Okay. And we actually went after him and begged him to join us. Okay. Even though he would take a financial hit joining us, because some of these people can make literally millions.
So he would make more money with bounties.
He would make more money than he would working for Microsoft.
Yeah,
sad but true.
Interesting.
But of course, he picked his.
He must be pretty good then.
He is brilliant. But I also think that these people that can earn that kind of money, that are that skilled, they're often not that motivated by that. He's motivated by interest and coming inside and seeing where the bodies are buried and being able to read the code bases and actually do some good. I mean, the thing is that he can come in and sweep up whole classes of bugs, and has had a massive impact on doing this. And we have had partners and other people report some pretty big bugs that have, had they got into the hands of attackers, would have caused us a lot of problems. But
can you tell our story? I mean, I can anonymize, of course, but something where you were, like maybe a close call, or where we had an incident.
I think that most people would be quite shocked and terrified to realize how many close calls every business has. It's only whether you know it or not. People often say when we announce it, we've become more and more transparent over the years. A few months ago, we started reporting all of our cloud bugs, the things which we were not obligated to reveal because they didn't have, CVs. They weren't assigned a kind of a CV score, because that's a good sign. When people are finding them and sweeping them up, it means that they're not out there in the population. So, I mean, I don't have any. There are quite a lot of examples, but I think a classic example, which is not really related to us, is Spectre and Meltdown. From several years ago, their researchers discovered a speculative execution bug in these Intel chipsets, and they essentially responsibly disclosed it. The companies formed a coalition of 30 or so organizations. I mean, it was unbelievable. For 9 months, people in Microsoft worked with people in Apple and Google and Adobe and you name it, 30 companies, the Linux Foundation and various others, to stage it so that we could get everything patched before this thing was revealed. It was rumbled 2 weeks before the sort of announced date, because some clever people said, hang on a minute, why are they doing this patch in the Linux kernel and they're also doing this, and they put it together. But that was a great example where something would have been truly ruinous had that got out. And I think that across the board, these security researchers are doing fantastic work. They're like an extended security team. We often say we end our presentation by saying we're one blue team. I mean, we in Microsoft, we in Business Central, and our partners and our customers, we are one blue team. We are all linked together.
So can you explain maybe what this red team, blue team
sure.
is? Because maybe some people don't know.
The red team, blue team thing comes from military war games and exercises. Like in the military, and unfortunately, cybersecurity is full of military metaphors. It's it's just the boyish origins of it. It's kind of changing, and we're moving out of that. But the red team played the attacker, the enemy, and the blue team played the sort of the goodies.
So it's a simulation, basically.
It's a simulation. It was a war game.
Yeah, we did one for BC a while ago, where we invited some people from the red team.
We did,
and they tried to breach into BC, and we had a blue team where people, tried to defend it.
Yeah, we have those. So that's interesting, because that was actually the origin story of And look, many years have passed, so I think it's safe to tell the story. In 2019, we got what was then the Azure red team, Craig Nelson and his team. Now it's just the Microsoft red team. These are some of the most skilled hackers in the world. They came over here to Copenhagen. They spent a week, more than a week, with us, with a series of engineers from Business Central, including the people that are now the security managers for Business Central. They took all these engineers in and they did what's called a ride-along. So here the red team takes engineers and they hack or attempt to hack Business Central in this case, exactly the same way a highly skilled, highly focused adversary would, or an APT. It could be a ransomware gang, it could be a state actor. And they went to work, and it was amazing to see the techniques that they used, the surveillance, the various stages of it. And there were some successes. The team learned a lot. It led to a fairly extensive amount of cleanup work, but it's great. It was an examination of where things were, and it was very surprising. The things that we thought would be problematic weren't, and the things that we thought were taken care of. They used all manner of attacks because that's what attackers do. They look at can they pivot from your development environments into your production environments? Yeah. Can we compromise members of your leadership team? And then once we compromise members of the leadership team, can we use those stolen credentials to fool other people into clicking malicious links? I mean, they showed us all of the techniques that attackers would use. And then, but very shortly after that, I was working with people from MSRC, the bug bounty, and I remember saying, "Hey, listen, we want to set up this Dynamics 365 bug bounty, and we also want to make sure that and I remember that one of our then directors was saying, are we sure we can do this? Like, do we want to? We've just had the red team operation. We're still cleaning up from that. Do we want to have the attention of these people on us? Isn't that going to put us at risk?" And I explained that actually, if there is hidden risk, it's there.
Yes.
And the attackers will find it.
Yeah.
It's far better to have these like security researchers or finders, as we call them, looking at us and examining us and incentivized to look at us, to find the bugs and report them to us and clean them up before they can be used against us. And thankfully, touch wood, so far, that's worked out very well. We've had all manner of bugs reported to us over the years, and they have gone a very long way to making sure that Business Central and the wider Dynamics 365 and Power Platform are very secure.
So what would you recommend to our partners and developers out there, BC developers, or partner channel to do to make sure that their solution remain secure? I mean, we're doing a lot of work to keep the service secure, the SaaS secure, Azure, and all the code we ship from Business Central is go through all the things we talked about before. So there's a lot of scrutiny around it. But what can they do? Because they also have a responsibility towards their own customers.
Yeah.
So what will you advise them to do?
I think the simplest thing would be for them to follow the security development lifecycle. That is a very mature, very complete, and absolutely brilliant.
It's well documented
security framework.
Yeah, we can put some links in the description.
Yeah, please do. And I think that there are a lot of great resources out there. There are one of the things which I love is we have these CISO workshops, which are out there. There's a video section with accompanying decks that are made available to people. They're aimed at Chief Information Security Officers, but they're actually open. Anybody with half a brain could understand them, and it lays out the entire kind of world of security, how these different pieces hang together. What is security assurance? What is operational security? What is security architecture? What is posture management? These terms are like, what is this stuff? They're ways of just describing different jobs that need to be done.
So there's some terminology around it, but also some concepts that are
they're useful concepts to understand, because someone's got to make sure that our products don't have bugs. That the code that we're shipping, if we're taking dependencies on components, for example, we want to make sure that we're updated to the latest ones. We use tools internally like component governance, or there are many external tools that do the same thing. They look at the various dependencies and they say, hey, there's a vulnerability in that. Make sure you patch that before you ship it. So that's just one small part of it. I mean, one thing which I would definitely say is a hugely powerful and advantageous thing for partners to do. A couple of things, actually, well, several. One is threat modeling. they don't really, this is rarely done outside of elite companies. And it's a pity because this is probably one of the most powerful mental models that you can apply.
It's quite easy to deploy. It doesn't take a lot of...
Threat modeling is deceptively simple. I mean, we made a 5-minute video for engineering resources here within Microsoft. It really just involves this. You sit down as a team. I mean, this is the super, I mean, you're going to get mail because people will be like, that's not threat modeling. But essentially, you sit down as a team. You understand the system. Like, what is the system? That's why you diagram it out. What are the different parts? Who are the dramatis personae? Like, what's connecting up? So there's a database, that's a compute engine, that's AKS, there's a user, that's a browser, blah, blah, blah. You diagram it and you connect things up. Then you analyze that system with an attacker's mindset and say, what could go wrong here?
Now you look at boundaries, I think like
you
that.
You have trust boundaries and all the rest of it. There's, again, so threat modeling and guidance on threat modeling is available on the market as Microsoft resources. There's abundant training. You don't need an awful lot of training. Again, this is deceptively simple. Understand the system, ask what could go wrong. Then when you figure out, oh, actually they could break in here, or that's a weak identity, or we are exposing that to the internet, we don't have a firewall here. Then you list out all of these are risks. These are threats. And then for each threat, you ask yourself, okay, what are we going to do about it? What's the mitigation or the fix? Or do we accept it? And this is another thing which I think people, you actually made a great point a few years ago. We're not, advanced and sort of good security people are not security absolutists. Remember that they're part of a business that has to ship value to customers. So you can't just be saying no all the time. The job of a highly competent security person is actually decide when things don't have to be fixed. The true security professionals are trying to find that balance between shipping value and maintaining operational speed versus security. But I think for our partners, just to come back to your question about what can our partners do, security development lifecycle, that's for the shipping of their actual resources. I think we'll make that our deck available that we presented at Directions, which is really a primer on how small businesses can really armor themselves, take themselves from the lowest percentile to the top percentiles of things by just considering keeping an inventory of what they have, making sure that it's up to date and so on. Identity management is a huge part of this. So much compromise happens because of compromised identities. Using weak passwords, not using multi-factor authentication. I strongly encourage partners to really look into this, mandate this in their Entra tenants, their M365 tenants, multi-factor authentication and good multi-factor authentication.
Preferably not SMS. Is that what you were saying?
Definitely not SMS. We actually use so-called phishing-resistant MFA. So these would be things like passkeys. This would mean that if this enforces proof of presence. So because attackers are getting good at gaming people or putting up a fake page that says type in your multi-factor authentication and then they just proxy it across. But this one, it brings up a little barcode. I mean, many people in Denmark are familiar with MitID that has a similar concept, or it has to be in Bluetooth range.
So that prevents the kind of man-in-the-middle type of attack, right?
Yeah, it essentially just prevents people from being able to spoof, and and I do think that there are. These small things can go a huge way by integrating threat modeling into your development lifecycle. Just ask the question, what could go wrong? How could we improve this? If we had to break into the system, what would we do if we lost the keys or the certificates or whatever? And you ask that question and you list out those threats and you mitigate them. You make sure that you're patching and updating and doing the other stuff in the SDL, like basic security training. I mean, people are often hiring in from industry or from colleges, and none of them, they've done maybe one course in cybersecurity. They don't even know the fundamentals of it. And a big differentiator for partners going forward will be the fact that they've got a good security profile, and that they can actually attest to the fact that we've had no incidents, and that they've done well.
By the way, I want to use the opportunity to say, if you get a call from somebody saying they're from Microsoft and there's some security issue on your computer, this is not us.
This is definitely not us. No.
I mean, you can confirm we don't call people.
Never.
We don't actually call people and telling them there is a virus on their computer. So these are people trying actually to get you to install some malware or some kind of somewhere somewhere on your computer.
Yeah, these are support
scammers. They usually what they do is that they kind of pretend. Try to make you believe there's something on your computer, and then try to guide you to some link and get you to install something on your computer so they can basically
they ask you to install
a
sort of a screen sharing software like AnyDesk or TeamViewer, and then they scan people, old people. They're a den of thieves, and and it's funny because you reminded me that a lot of those people are getting taken down now, not by necessarily technical means, but by a whole series of cybersecurity heroes and heroines that are often underserved. So we've often focused on the technical people, the NOC analysts, the deep packet inspection, the AI engineers and prompt engineers, the network engineers. But some of the most effective cybersecurity stuff is in fact legal and marketing. It's awareness raising. When we take down the infrastructure for these ransomware gangs, this is lawyers that are doing this. This is the digital crimes unit at Microsoft, mostly women, mostly lawyers, and they have probably 10 times more effect than many of the security teams do, because they are really disrupting the bad people.
At the root, basically.
Yeah. And that's another thing which I think people don't realize is that cybersecurity as a discipline is extremely broad. It's not just a narrow technical thing. A lot of it's psychology. A lot of it's convincing business people to take something seriously, or painting a story of what would happen if a system were compromised. So I do think that it's evolving. And I mean, right now we're in the AI age. We are in a good place, because at this exact moment in the arms race, the defenders are helped by AI. AI is great at information compression. So for us now being able to analyze logs at enormous speed and then get it down.
Yeah, a lot of work.
A lot of work is just
about analyzing tons of logs. Going through some really tedious work for a human being that can be done easily with AI these days.
Even things like traditionally threat modeling. So, but my day job is to often sit down for multiple meetings and look at a system, try and understand it, and work the team through that process. But I've now got a co-pilot threat modeler with me that's watching the transcript. I can speak to it on the side and ask it questions. Hey, is this a security anti-pattern? Yes, it is. They shouldn't do that. Now, the genius for this thing is that as a human being, it's hard for me to remember the 300 or so controls that are SDL controls that apply to different systems. If it's a Cosmos database, then. But that's trivially easy. So if people put the threat model through the threat modeling copilot, it can then assess it. It can see all of the applicable policies and compliance rules and weaknesses. And this is massively boosted my team and I's ability to spot risks and problems. So this is a case where AI is transformational. Now, of course,
another thing I've heard actually, what AI is really good at and being used extensively for detecting attacks. That usually, when you have there's a lot of logging going on, on your network or something, and usually when you have some attempts, there is some. It's about finding the outliers, finding something that is not fitting the patterns, and it can be really, really difficult for a human because it's a large amount of data, and AI is extremely good at that kind of thing. Picking out, something that is not,
in a needle and
tons of logs or
large
amount of data, which
entirely right.
It would take ages for humans to go through. Yeah. AI can pick that up, and sometimes it's nothing, but sometimes it's like, hey, at least you can it can get your attention on some of these things before it happens.
Completely right. I think that there's two problems. One of the big problems in cybersecurity, especially for network operations, security operations centers, is alert fatigue. The other one is, drowning in a sea of signal. And that's the signal boosting that I referred to earlier. Yeah. That information compression and forget about all that stuff, look at this. And also being able to make these associations between disparate things, impossible travel, plus that person has had multiple resets, plus their phone number, called, and the AIs can put this together and say, this is a risk profile. It also helps us, because one of the things that at the beginning of this, I probably just sort of described myself as a risk manager, because ultimately that's what we do. We're always trying to manage out risk and reduce it. And I think one of the things which we are now able to do is we can look at the entire estate across Dynamics 365 and Power Platform, and we can say, okay, this is made up of hundreds of services, right, that are assembled together into products. So what the customer sees is actually made up of little disparate parts. Those are, there are variations between the security maturity of those different teams and services and their capabilities and the complexities that they have. Some have got inherent risk. They've got a lot of attack surface, like things that can go wrong, lots of infrastructure. Sometimes they've got an inexperienced security manager that maybe needs a bit of help. Now, we can assess all of those with the help of the AIs, and we can have this heat map so that my team and I can focus on the services that need more support and more help. Maybe they're doing a high risk thing. Maybe they're focusing on now, MCP servers are all the rage, and this is a new thing, and everyone's rushing into an area to say, I'm going to ship it, and we can then say, let's calm down. Let's give you some centralized guidance. Let's focus on what's important. So today, because it's always an arms race. Today, it's benefiting the defenders. AI is transformational in cybersecurity. The Defender for X series of Microsoft products are all really doing phenomenal work out there in terms of helping customers sort through the chaff and being able to focus in on what's important. We see huge wins in terms of the preventative, the security assurance and preventative side of things. We also use it extensively in incident response. When we had the Midnight Blizzard incident, which is publicly recognized, Microsoft's own mail systems were compromised by a state-level actor.
So what was that? Well, that was...
I mean, without going into details, a state-level actor was decided to sort of... they used a technique and they managed to access certain mailboxes.
I remember that. That was in the news. So
it was in the news. There's nothing secret about it. But for us to figure out all of the potentially compromised identities and systems was such a Herculean task that a normal cleanup operation for an event of that scale could take years. But because we were able to use the AI systems and tools to again compress and do the various cross-references and to get all of this gargantuan amounts of telemetry and weed it out, that took it down from months to weeks, and which in cybersecurity terms is like flash fast. It's speed of light, So it's also very useful for incident response, and often we're retooling ourselves around seeing how we can do this. So in the threat modeling meetings, I used to have to take notes whilst trying to understand the system and think about all the threats and making judgments about these threats. Yay or nay, can you ship? That's a lot of cognitive burden. It's like a fighter pilot having to deal with 5 planes at once. Now, Copilot takes the notes. I don't have to worry about that. It's got a perfect record of coming up with the action items. I just have to sit there, think, and talk. And it takes care of all that stuff. So I think that what we do need to be careful of, because now AIs are finding bugs, 0 days. AIs are used to make the old guidance that, you can spot a phishing mail because it'll have spelling errors. In the age of ChatGPT and Copilot and Claude and Gemini, that's no longer true. So attackers, and we have, and both Anthropic and OpenAI have shipped information about how attackers they're trying to figure out, how can we use this stuff? How can we weaponize these techniques against people like us? But they haven't really found a good use for it yet. Okay. So we'll see. We'll see how it rolls.
All right, Jonathan. I think we could talk about this for hours.
Forever, yeah.
If you want, we can do we could do another episode about it. We could talk, for.
We there's so much questions from our
let us know in the comment if you want to hear more about it. But so, last words, last recommendation for partners and Business Central, channel. What should they do to stay secure? You mentioned, you mentioned some things,
I think that I'd really like to just give them a message of hope. It's not as bad as it looks. It's fine.
Okay.
We've got your back. Doing a relatively small amount of things like multi-factor authentication, security development lifecycle, even giving some thought, threat modeling, giving some thought to, if you look at the deck which we will share on SMB security, keeping an inventory of your things, making sure that it's patched and up to date, doing basic vetting of your stuff and so on, like a few small things, you can go from the bottom 5% to the top 5%. You can make yourself a very hard target very easily. And this is the tragedy of cybersecurity. The basics are the basics, and the basics are basic, get you an awful long way. And the hard stuff, you can leave it to us. That's why you pay us. The very hard stuff, the super advanced stuff, and the vigilance and the watching, the alerting and the response, you can leave that to people that do this every day and are gifted at it. So you do your bit, basics, and we do ours, and we're going to be fine.
All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Cheers.
Thank you for watching.